What is up? What is up, YouTube, man? Hey, check this out. Let me hit the refresh. Can I hit a refresh? I want to, yeah. Long crime, man. The Karmelo Anthony, man. I really feel sorry for this little brother, man. I feel sorry for him because he gonna do some time, bruh. I don't feel sorry for Diddy, who I know who gonna do some time. Hey, man, it's time. The Lord is letting you know, all this little bull stuff you want to do and hurt people, you want to hurt God's people and have a reason to get away with it? Nah. I feel sorry for him because he thought I stabbed him in self-defense. Hand-to-hand combat. And you raised the bar. Whoever raised the bar is the one getting in trouble. So, hey. And I understand the black and white thing. I understand that. I understand a lot of things. But I understand law also. You got to understand the law of the lands. You walking on this land, you don't like the law, you go to another land. Y'all hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, man. Let's check this bad boy out, man. Here we go. This is crazy, man. This is crazy.
We are following a major update in the case of a high school athlete allegedly stabbed to death by another high school athlete at a track meet.
I asked the grand jury to return a first-degree murder indictment against Karmelo Anthony, which they did.
A Texas district attorney taking to social media to announce Karmelo Anthony is formally facing charges that could lock him up for life. But that's not the only big development in this case. We got our hands on details of a surveillance video of the alleged attack that killed Austin Metaf. We will dive into what it shows. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart.
And neither one of them, they wasn't no bad people. That little kid wasn't bad, man. He just did the wrong thing at the wrong time.
In Collin County, Texas,
That's
is going
crazy.
for a first-degree murder conviction of Karmelo Anthony. There are a lot of people who are taking that teen's defense, saying that he acted in self-defense. Now, what does the evidence say? At least the evidence that we know about at this point. The school district in Frisco, Texas, has said it has surveillance video of Anthony's confrontation with Austin Metaf at that midweek track meet in April, where Anthony allegedly stabbed Metaf in the chest and killed him. At this point, allegedly murdered him. We'll get into what that video reportedly shows in a moment, but here's what we know about what led up to that alleged attack on April 2nd in Frisco, north of Dallas. Austin Metaf's and Karmelo Anthony's schools were competing at a track meet. If you've ever run track, you ever been to a track meet, you know that teams typically have spots around the track where athletes can hang out with their teammates in between events. In Austin Metaf's case, he was with his twin brother and their teammates under a tent, according to police, because rain had started to fall and that delayed the track meet. Now, witnesses say another athlete who wasn't on Metaf's team stood under the tent. His name was Karmelo Anthony.
Karmelo Anthony, class of 2025, Centennial High School, Frisco, Texas.
That's video of Anthony mic'd up for a football tournament for Carolina Sports District that we found on YouTube. He and Metaf were both football stars at their Texas high schools. Metaf was taking recruiting visits at some big schools like Arkansas. He planned to play at the next level, and Anthony also posted on social media that he was receiving scholarship offers to go play college football. You wonder now if that will ever happen because of what he allegedly did next on April 2nd. That day, Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metaf got into a confrontation under the tent. According to witnesses, Metaf told Anthony to leave the team's tent, and at that point, Anthony allegedly reached into his backpack and said something along the lines of "make me." Here's what Austin's twin brother told WFAA-TV.
There was this kid, before I knew his name now, this kid was sitting under our tent at track. We asked him to move. He started getting aggressive and talking reckless. And my brother stepped in and said, "You need to move." And he's like, "Make me move." Austin grabbed his backpack. The kid, I tried to whip around as fast as I could, but I didn't see the stab.
Police say as Metaf went to move Anthony, Anthony pulled out a knife and stabbed Metcalf in the chest. Metcalf died in his twin brother's arms. What Anthony allegedly did next could be damning if his case goes to trial. Anthony allegedly ran to another part of the track after stabbing Metcalf. When police arrived, the first officer to make contact with Anthony wrote in the arrest report that he asked Anthony to put his hands in the air. Then Anthony allegedly said, quote, "I was protecting myself." The officer also said that Anthony told him, quote, "He put his hands on me." And when the officer said that he had Anthony in custody, the teen allegedly said, and this is the damning part, quote, "I'm not alleged, I did it." Police say that Anthony ditched the knife and ran before he was arrested by officers who note in their reports that Anthony was hysterically crying when arrested, and he asked if Metcalf would be okay. Anthony was initially held on $1 million bond, but then the judge in this case, less than 2 weeks after he was arrested, lowered Karmelo's bond to $250,000, which he was able to make. Here's video. Per WFAA of Anthony walking free. He will have to wear a GPS monitor, be on house arrest, and he checks in with the court each Friday. And if he doesn't follow those rules, he will go back into custody. Before we get back to this episode of On the Case, I want to talk about something important, because a lot of the stories that we cover here at Law and Crime, you see them, they show that life can be unpredictable and having a great lawyer matters. And that's where
I'm not trying to insinuate anything, but I'm trying to let you know these people in jail, they got little to go on. So every little thing means something big to them. He got arrested, he's crying. He holding the dude's hand. That guy that's supposed to be representing them, nah, dog. He is not. He ain't wrapped too tight, man. And he did time. It sure is funny. Everybody who did time done got smart all of a sudden.
Defense and $250,000 made the judge the target. Angela Tucker for thepeople.com/OTC. You can also scan the QR code on your screen or click the link below. Judge Angela Tucker has not allowed cameras in court for this case, but according to KDFW, Anthony's defense argued at a bond hearing that he wasn't a flight risk and $1 million was just too high of a bond for his family to be able to afford. Now, the lowering of the bond to $250,000 made the judge the target of threats. Collin County, Texas posted on social media saying, quote, "We are aware of a social media post on this platform that appears to dox a sitting judge. Sharing a judge's private information is a crime and will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Cameras may not be allowed in court for this case, but there is so much of this trial that is very visible playing out in the court of public opinion. A crowdfunding site has raised more than $500,000 for Karmelo Anthony's defense. People saying that they believe Karmelo is not a murderer and that he acted in self-defense. Anthony's family held a news conference saying they have become the victim of threats. Here's Anthony's mom speaking per KDFW.
In wake of this tragic incident, our family has been under attack. Whatever you think what happened between Karmelo and the Metcalf boys, my 3 younger children, my husband, and I didn't do anything to deserve to be threatened, harassed, and lied about.
And the tension between families has been high. At that same news conference, Jeff Metcalf showed up. He's Austin's dad. He was there. He stood in front of cameras and sunglasses and protest until he was escorted out per KTVT. Jeff Metcalf has also been vocal on social media, and he posted a response to the news that Karmelo Anthony, his son's alleged killer, had been indicted on a charge of first-degree murder. I'll tell you what he said in just a moment, but let's get to this grand jury indictment.
Earlier this spring, our community was shaken by what happened at a school track meet in Frisco. The violent loss of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf.
Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis posted that video on social media announcing that a grand jury has indicted Karmelo Anthony on a charge of first-degree murder. If found guilty, Anthony, who's now 18, could face between 5 to 99 years in prison. Jeff Metcalf, Austin's dad, posted on social media, quote, "Indicted first-degree murder," all in caps, with #justice for Austin. Karmelo Anthony's defense attorney is named Mike Howard.
Mike Howard, your Dallas criminal defense lawyer, here to talk to you today about what to expect when you're looking to hire a lawyer.
This is a video of Howard posted on his office's Facebook page just to give you an idea of what he looks like, what he sounds like. Howard hasn't commented on the indictment of his client, but the Anthony family also has a spokesperson in Dallas-based minister Dominique Alexander, who posted this picture with Anthony after he was released on bond. He was the person who escorted Anthony out of court when he was able to make bond. Alexander went public with his reaction to the indictment, calling for people to pray for the Anthony family and saying in part, quote, "To the racists, the bigots, and those filled with hate who've targeted Karmelo, his family, and even myself, you do not intimidate us. We are not backing down." This case is yet another example of what it means to be Black in America, where even our self-defense is questioned, scrutinized, and politicized. My involvement, like many others, came as a direct response to the overwhelming hate, threats, and outside influence that have surrounded this case since day one. He also said, quote, "There will be a trial." Another critical piece of evidence, if this goes to trial, will be this surveillance video that came from the Frisco Independent School District. The ISD has video from a camera that's mounted on the stadium of the alleged murder of Austin Metaf. Now, the district is not releasing a copy of the video. They're not letting reporters take pictures of the video, but they did allow reporters to see it. WFAA in Dallas wrote that the video, it's wide angled of the stadium, and the incident happens in the small left corner of the screen. Quote, "It's difficult to determine how many people are present or what exactly is happening at the tent. Around 9:55 a.m., a sudden movement is observed at the tent, but the alleged act itself is not visible. There are a lot of moving but heavily pixelated figures at the top of the bleachers, just above the tent, and at the bottom of the tent. It appears to be sprinkling at the time," end quote. According to the TV station, that video is believed to be one of the pieces of evidence that was presented to the grand jury ahead of their indictment of Karmelo Anthony this week on a charge of first-degree murder. Joining us now is Bridget Williams, criminal defense attorney. Great to see you again. Thanks for talking about this story with us. What does this grand jury indictment mean for the case against Karmelo Anthony?
So this is just a regular routine process that has to happen for any felony case in the state of Texas. So any case that moves forward to an actual trial setting has to first go through a grand jury. So the thing is that a grand jury, they decide if there was enough probable cause for an officer to make an arrest. So it's a very stark difference from what the grand jury decides and what actually goes on in a trial. So the first step is the arrest that was made by the police officers, did it rise to the level of probable cause? So was there enough evidence? And then if it moves forward to that, past that point, goes to a trial, the burden is raised to beyond a reasonable doubt, which is much, much higher.
And Karmelo Anthony's now been indicted with first-degree murder. For it to be first degree compared to second degree, what will the district attorney in Collin County, Texas have to prove?
So first-degree murder is pretty much meditated, intentional murder, right? I intended to do this. Here in Texas, second degree would be reduced down to a manslaughter charge, which gives not necessarily intent and doesn't also require premeditation or just, I intended for this to happen, the intentional killing of another. So that's the difference there. So it's a pretty straightforward thing there.
I don't think it was intentional.
And those are set elements that are set out in the Texas Penal Code.
And with that, because you look at what we understand police say happened at this track meet, and there was this altercation between Austin Metaf and Karmelo Anthony, and Karmelo Anthony reaches in allegedly into his bag, and then Metaf comes up to him, and then it feels very spur of the moment in some ways with the narrative that's been laid out. When you talk premeditated, you know, this isn't a case where he woke up this morning probably and felt like he was going to go stab somebody allegedly at a track meet. What's the time that fits in for it to be considered premeditated as opposed to being in the heat of the moment and something happens where I would assume it would be second degree murder?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that that's something that would come out in the trial setting. However, in this situation, Karmelo Anthony, he admits to the killing of this other young man, right? He admits to it and he says that he was defending himself. So he's saying, okay, I did intentionally kill him. I meant to do that, but it was because I was defending myself and I felt threatened. I thought that he was going to harm me in some way. I thought that he was coming for me to assault me, to harm me. So I was defending myself. So that's really the difference here. I think that it's more of that difference of his desire to say, well, I was defending myself opposed to necessarily the timing.
The district attorney who released the video last night saying that the death of Austin Metaf, it was a violent death, and Karmelo Anthony has been indicted after the evidence was presented to a grand jury on first-degree murder charges. You're in the Dallas area. What do you know about the district attorney in that county, Greg Willis?
Well,
Paul, he want to talk about what happened. I don't care what happened. Just fix it.
After the evidence was presented to a grand jury on first-degree murder charges.
My bad.
You're in the Dallas area. What do you know about the district attorney in that county, Greg Willis?
Well, Greg Willis he's been the DA for a while over in Collin County. He was former prosecutor. He is someone who leads the DA's office pretty much fairly, I would say, in Collin County. But he is someone who's also going to be sure that he goes after the truth and pushes all of the DAs to do the same. But to make sure that you go after the truth, do it fairly, make sure that every person is receiving the justice that they deserve, and make sure that each officer is doing their job properly. And so that's really what any district attorney's job is, to present evidence, and the fact of all the evidence that's presented to them from the police department, provide that to the defense attorneys, and so that way that they can prepare for any trial setting and make sure that any defendant can present their case in a trial the best way they possibly can.
And in this case, let's talk about some of the evidence, some of the facts that have been laid out as far as what we're hearing from police. And I know we've talked about this before, and Karmelo Anthony's defense is going to be that I felt threatened and I had to turn to force, and that ended up in the loss of life of Austin Metaf. Based on what the law says in the state of Texas about self-defense, how strong of a case does he have?
I'm going to say, in my personal opinion, I don't think it's very, very strong. And I'm just going to be honest with you. There's been such a, a very strong,
I hate to say,
just a heating, going on in the area where people are just upset about both sides, really on both sides. But what I would say is that he doesn't necessarily have a very strong argument there for self-defense. Hopefully his defense counsel has something that they're going to be talking about in trial that we haven't heard yet. But based off of just what the law is right now, you have, as self-defense, you have to bring equal force to whatever it is that is assaulting you or that you are presented with. So if someone is pushing you, you don't necessarily have the liberty to go back and shoot them with a gun or stab them with a knife, right? Equal force for pushing would be back with your hands, right? That is equal force. And so it rises above equal force for what we would consider for self-defense on paper.
Because there is surveillance video that I know the school district showed reporters, but it seems from the description that you can't really see a lot of what happened. And we don't know that there's video to this point that exactly shows it. But could Karmelo Anthony argue, his attorneys argue, that Austin Metaf was being very physical with him, that it was more than pushing? I mean, when it comes to equal force, does it have to be a knife and a knife, a gun and a gun, hand-to-hand combat, as opposed to feeling threatened in a way that he was going to punch me in the face and it was going to cause me serious injury? So I had this knife and it's something that I had to use.
Yes, I think that's a great point. And those are the issues and the matters that the defense counsel will be raising, because those things are up to interpretation, right? And that's what's best for a trial setting. So again, on paper, it's supposed to be equal force. But when you move forward to a trial, the defense counsel is going to be discussing how he felt that this was in fact equal. This was the reason why he felt that he needed to do this in order to save his life, or why he felt it was necessary in order for him to walk away alive. So he had to do this, otherwise he didn't feel like he would have been able to walk away.
There's been so much of this case that as it heads forward, we don't have cameras in the courtroom. Judge Angela Tucker decided against that, but there's so much that's visually playing out outside of court. And there's been threats. The judge was threatened. The family of Karmelo Anthony has said that they have been threatened. You've seen Jeff Metcalf of Austin Metcalf's dad. You can't imagine what he is going through, having lost a son. So there's just a lot of that playing out. And a big controversial part of this has been the bond. And that Karmelo Anthony, here he is, accused of first-degree murder, but he's able to go home to his family after the bond was lowered from $1 million down to $250,000. What, from a legal perspective, went into that decision? Were you surprised that he was allowed out on bond?
Okay, so I would say I'm not surprised at all that he was allowed to be let out on bond. So first, this is a 17-year-old child. That's the way I look at it. He's a 17-year-old child. He doesn't have any criminal history at all whatsoever. In this particular case, he's saying that he felt threatened, his life felt threatened, and that's the reason why he decided to defend himself in this way. So that's his argument. When a judge makes the determination of how to lower a bond, they take into consideration the same things they take into consideration in every case. So when we have a bond hearing, what is the offense? Murder. Okay, we're at the highest level there. Then, does the person have any criminal history? No. Is the person a flight risk? Does he have the resources, means to go to Mexico or go to Dubai, right, and never come back? And does it come back for the actual trial setting? Does the family have the means in order to pay what the original bond amount was? The original bond amount in this case was $1 million. The family has stated and testified that they did not have the resources in order to do that. And then the last element there is he a threat to himself or to others? And in this situation, this is an isolated matter. He's not going around saying, hey, I'm going to shoot up multiple people, or I have a history of doing something like that to where I'm a violent person to society. In this situation, it's isolated. So he doesn't pose a threat to himself or to others. So the court allow for the bond to be reduced down, and then the person can post that bond if he has the resources to do, which he was able to, but he still had to have an ankle monitor. So Karmelo Anthony can't leave his home without getting permission from Judge Tucker. So he is at his house. This is just allows him to not be in jail until the case is resolved, but to be at his home with his family until the case is resolved. I think sometimes people get the bond hearing confused with the actual trial setting. The only purpose of a bond hearing is, do you need to stay in jail, isolated here until the case is resolved, or can you go home and stay there until the case is resolved?
In the district attorney's announcement of the grand jury indictment, there was a line that talked about in Texas, if you're convicted of first-degree murder, you could spend 99 years in prison or you could spend 5 years in prison. And that 5-year mark, that felt very low for first-degree murder, just as an outsider kind of looking at it, because when you think of someone who's convicted of that crime, they're never going to get out of prison ever again. Who would ultimately, and we have a long way to go, but if this ends in a guilty verdict, who decides whether it is 5 years or 99 years?
Well, that depends on if the defense counsel goes to the judge or to the jury for punishment. So if they decide to go to the judge, then Judge Tucker or whoever is the appointed judge would make that determination. And they use a series of factors to make that determination. Has the person, been in type of anger management counseling? Have they been doing any type of mitigating circumstances? They would take into account any criminal history, which he doesn't have any. They would take into account the testimony of the victim's family, so their words and what they have to say. She takes into account the testimony of the defendant's family as well. So there's multiple factors that go into that. Then the defense counsel also has the option of going to the jury. So the same individuals who made the determination of guilt innocence can also have the determination of determining the amount of years that a person spends in prison, or if there's something else that needs to be attached to that as well.
So did you say the defense? So if he's found, it's their decision of whether or not whether it's the jury or the judge makes the call?
Correct. That's correct. So they can choose to go to a jury or the judge. In a situation like this, if I'm defense counsel, if it gets to that point, then I'm going to set to go to the judge for punishment. And that's because the judge has history, right, of listening to cases similar to this. They're less emotionally involved. And so they're there to seek exactly what it is fair based off of the facts that were presented. So if I'm defense counsel in this case, I would be going to the judge for punishment if it got to that point.
And you're in the Dallas area, and it seems like every time that this case comes up, I mean, it's very, very divisive. And we've seen tension between the families. I know Jeff Metcalf showed up at a news conference for the family. It's a lot. And I think about a jury in Collin County where probably everybody has an opinion on what happened. How do you get a fair jury, an impartial jury in a case like this everybody's talking about it?
That's a tough one. I would say that I know that there has been some discussions about changing venues, and that just means changing counties, right? Because it would be difficult to find a fair and an impartial jury in the county of which it happened in. And so that has to be approved, right? So it has to be approved by the judge in the Collin County area, in that court, in order for it to venues to move. So I would say that's probably the first way, is change of venue. The second way for that would be for just to try to do a really, really good voir dire. And voir dire is just a questioning of the jury pool where the defense counsel and prosecution gets an opportunity to question each of the potential jurors, asking them their true and biased and unbiased thoughts on various issues that are related to this particular offense. So things that are related to the offense that occurred itself, so of this situation, but also how do they feel about officers? How do they feel about racial tension? How do they feel about matters that are going on in our country right now, right? So those are all questions that a defense counsel and prosecutor can ask any of the people in the jury pool. And so that would be the main thing there.
Yeah, it's a case that, I mean, if you're a parent, you feel for the Metcalf family, and you think of Karmelo Anthony's family as well, like those parents and the threats that they say that they've been taking. I mean, it's just a really tough case all the way around. So sad that Austin Metcalf lost his life. We'll see how the legal process plays out. Bridget Williams, thank you for taking the time to be with us. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime.
Thank you for having me.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.
That's it, man. When I'm sitting here, my shoulders get to hurting, man. I done did as much as I can do today. Karmelo Anthony, man, why did you have to do that, man? You could have just left. That wasn't even your tent. I understand people saying that it's self-defense. I understand that. Self-defense, it's almost like, as an armed security guard that I was, you can only use enough force to detain things. You can't, because somebody threatened to fight you, they don't have no weapons. You can't go get a freaking army and say this is self-defense. I'm just defending myself. You know, it's a level. Is my point, and that's where y'all missing the level. You can't say, well, it was two of them. You could have left. You could have just fled. You could have fled. You could have ran. Oh, they about to kick my tail. I need to defend myself. You can flee. They got me trapped. I had no other choice because I had to defend myself. Y'all not looking at it like that. Y'all just saying, you know, self-defense. And then you got the playing a race card. If you just take everything away, oh my God, man, I hate to say it. I'm sorry, man. I wish it was not true, but he gonna do some time, man. Y'all take it light, take it slow. Hey, y'all tell him Uncle Mike told you so. Peace out.